Let me ask you something straight up. How many times in the past week have you said yes when everything in your gut was screaming no? Maybe you picked up extra work when your own plate was already overflowing. Maybe you lent money you couldn't afford, or maybe you agreed to plans you didn't even want to be at. And afterward, you weren't proud, you weren't generous, you were resentful. That's not kindness. That's self-betrayal. Here's the truth: every time you say yes to something you don't want to do, you're saying no to yourself. No to your time, no to your energy, no to your priorities. And I'll tell you something else: you're not fooling anybody. People can feel when your yes isn't authentic. And here's the kicker: guilt does not prove you've done something wrong. Guilt just means you're violating a habit, not a value. You're trained to people please, but that's not integrity. It's avoidance. Every time you say yes, when your heart and mind are screaming no, you're betraying yourself. Let's be real here. It's not kindness, it's not generosity, it's not love, it's self-abandonment. And the price tag on self-abandonment is steep resentment, burnout, and the quiet erosion of your own self-respect. You can tell yourself you're being the bigger person, or that you're just helping out, but if deep down you know you're lying about what you want, then what you're really doing is throwing yourself under the bus. And guess who's driving you? Think about it. You have 24 hours in it a day. That's not a theory, that's math. You don't get rollover hours like cell phone minutes. When you say yes to something you don't want to do, you're literally giving away time and energy you'll never get back. You could have used that time to rest, to work on your goals, to spend with people who actually energize you, or to simply do nothing and recharge. Instead, you spent it doing something that drained you. And while you're busy draining yourself, you're secretly building up a wall of bitterness toward the very people you think you're helping. That's not kindness. That's deception toward them and toward yourself. Here's the kicker: most people don't even want your fake yes. They'd rather hear a direct, honest no than deal with your half-hearted, resentful yes. Because when you show up with that forced smile when your body is present, but your spirit is absent, it shows. People pick up on it. They may not call you out, but they feel it. Your yes isn't authentic, and authenticity matters in every relationship, whether it's personal or professional. Why do you keep doing it then? Why do you keep betraying yourself? Simply guilt and fear. You're afraid if you say no, someone will be disappointed. You're afraid they'll think less of you, judge you, or pull back their love, respect, or approval. So you agree, you nod, you comply. But here's the tough truth: if someone's affection for you is conditional on you always saying yes, that's not a real relationship. That's manipulation. And if you're the one enforcing that rule on yourself, then you're manipulating yourself. Either way, you lose. Self-betrayal doesn't just show up in the big decisions. It's often in the little moments that add up over time. You agree to a coffee date when you'd rather rest. You say yes to staying late at work even though you're already exhausted. You let someone borrow money you can't afford to lose. Each yes chips away at your sense of self. And with each chip, you send yourself a message: my needs don't matter, my feelings are negotiable, my boundaries are disposable. Imagine telling that to someone you love. You wouldn't dare. Yet you say it to yourself every time you cave. Now let's call it what it is. Saying yes when you mean no isn't noble. It's dishonest. You're lying to yourself and to the other person. And dishonesty doesn't build stronger bonds. It weakens them. Over time, the people in your life don't know the real you because you never gave them a chance to meet the real you. They only know the agreeable version of you, the one who's too scared to rock the boat. And let me tell you, that's not love, that's performance. And performances always end with exhaustion. Some people will say, but I just want to be nice. I don't want to hurt their feelings. That's a cop-out. It's not nice to betray yourself. It's not nice to silently resent someone while smiling to their face. That's not kindness. It's cowardice dressed up as politeness. Real kindness requires honesty. Real kindness respects both people in the relationship, not just the one doing the asking. Here's what I want you to sit with: every yes you give takes something from you. The question is, was it worth it? If you say yes to helping your best friend move, and you're tired, but you know they do the same for you, maybe that yes matches your values. But if you're saying yes because you're terrified they'll be upset if you decline, then that yes is rotten at the core. The only thing you're feeding is your fear of disapproval. And that fear will never be satisfied, no matter how many times you say yes. Self-betrayal is a cycle, but it's a cycle you can break. The first step is owning the fact that when you say yes against your will, you're not being kind, you're being dishonest. You're teaching people how to treat you, and you're teaching yourself that your needs don't matter. And nothing changes until you stop pretending that's generosity. Real generosity comes from overflow. You give because you want it, not because you're cornered into it. So next time you feel that automatic yes creeping up your throat, stop. Ask yourself, am I saying yes out of love or out of fear? Am I honoring myself with this yes, or am I betraying myself? If the answer is betrayal, then you know what to do. Because saying yes when you mean no isn't just a bad habit. It's a slow leak in the foundation of your life. And if you don't patch it up, one day you'll look around and realize you built a life filled with everyone else's priorities but your own. That's not kindness, that's tragedy. One of the biggest reasons people struggle with saying no is because they don't give themselves a moment to think. The request comes in, the pressure is on, and before you even realize it, your mouth is already forming the word yes. It's an automatic reflex. You're on autopilot, saying yes out of habit, not choice. And that's where the problem starts, because a knee-jerk yes doesn't come from strength. It comes from fear. The antidote is simple but powerful. Pause before you answer. That pause is your reset button, your chance to step off autopilot and into control. Let's be real. You don't owe anyone an instant response. The idea that you must decide on the spot is a myth, and it's one that manipulative people love to exploit. They ask for something and then stare at you, waiting for your immediate commitment. And because silence feels uncomfortable, you fill it with agreement. That's not choice, that's pressure. But when you train yourself to pause even for a few seconds, you break the cycle. You're no longer reacting, you're deciding, and there's a big difference between the two. Here's what the pause does. It gives you space to ask yourself, do I actually want to do this? Do I have the energy, time, or resources to commit? Am I saying yes because it aligns with my values, or because I'm afraid of how they'll react if I say no? That tiny pocket of reflection changes everything. In those seconds, you can catch yourself before you give away your power. Because let's face it, once you blurt out a yes, it's a lot harder to walk it back with guilt, awkwardness, or conflict. But if you pause, you prevent the mess before it starts. The pause is not just about time, it's about reclaiming authority over your own decisions. Think of it like this: you wouldn't sign a legal contract without reading it first, right? So why would you treat your personal commitments any differently? Every yes is a contract. You're agreeing to spend your time, your energy, sometimes even your money. And when you say yes without pausing, you're basically signing that contract blindfolded. The pause is your chance to read the fine print. Some people worry that pausing makes them look uncertain or weak. Wrong. It makes you look thoughtful and deliberate. People actually respect someone who considers their commitments instead of rushing into them. If anything, the person who always agrees instantly is the one who looks unreliable, because deep down, others know that those quick yeses often turn into excuses later. When you pause, you communicate that your word means something. If you say yes after thinking it through, people can trust that you'll follow through. So how do you build the habit of pausing? You create a buffer phrase. Instead of giving a direct yes or no, you say something like, "Let me check my schedule and get back to you," or "I need a little time to think that over." That buys you the space you need. It shifts the interaction from immediate compliance to deliberate choice. And it's not a lie. You really do need to check, because your mental and emotional calendar matters just as much as your physical one. Here's the tough love part. If you can't give yourself permission to pause, you're not living your life, you're living on demand. You've basically handed everyone around you a remote control, and they can press the yes button whenever they want. That's not generosity, that's surrender. And nobody is going to protect your time if you don't. The pause is how you start protecting it. It's you taking the remote back. Now, don't confuse the pause with avoidance. I'm not saying you should dodge the question forever or string people along. The pause isn't about escaping responsibility. It's about stepping into responsibility with clarity. There's a big difference between "I'll get back to you" as a stall tactic and "I'll get back to you" as a thoughtful commitment to answer honestly. The first is avoidance. The second is empowerment. Let's also talk about the emotional side. A pause doesn't just give you time to think. It gives you time to regulate. Sometimes the pressure of someone's request triggers guilt, anxiety, or the old urge to please. If you answer immediately, you're speaking from that emotion. But if you pause, you give yourself a chance to calm down and respond from logic, not panic. That's when your decisions align with your values instead of your fears. Think about how many regrets in your life came from rushing, that car you bought too fast, that job you said yes to without considering the long-term cost, that favor you agreed to and then hated yourself for afterward. What all those have in common is impulse. A pause would have saved you. A pause would have let you ask the right questions. A pause would have protected your energy, your money, your time, and your peace of mind. Here's the bottom line: saying yes instantly is about avoiding discomfort. Pausing before you answer is about creating integrity, and integrity always wins in the long run. You don't build a strong life on quick reactions. You build it on deliberate, intentional choices. The pause may only last a few seconds, but the respect it builds for yourself and from others lasts a lifetime. So next time someone asks for your time, your energy, or your commitment, do yourself a favor, stop, breathe. Because that pause isn't just silence, it's your power. And when you learn to use it, you'll find that you're no longer controlled by guilt, fear, or pressure. You're in control, and that's the first real step toward living a life that belongs to you, not to everybody else. Most people make the mistake of turning now into a whole courtroom defense. Someone asks them for something, and instead of simply saying, no, I can't do that, they launch into a long explanation, apologizing for existing and piling on excuses that sound more like begging for permission than setting a boundary. That's not a no, that's a performance. And let me be clear, when you over-explain or get defensive about your no, you're handing the other person ammunition to shoot it down. You're giving them reasons to argue with you. And when they do, you feel pressured, guilty, and 9 times out of 10, you backpedal into a yes. That cycle ends the moment you learn to be direct without being defensive. Being direct means saying your no with clarity, honesty, and respect, but without a 5-paragraph essay to justify it. Directness is powerful because it communicates confidence. It says, I know my limits, I respect myself, and I respect you enough to be honest. Defensive explanations, on the other hand, communicate fear. They scream, I'm afraid you won't like me if I say no, so let me dress it up with excuses and apologies to soften the blow. That doesn't make the other person respect you. It makes them see you as negotiable. Here's an example. Let's say someone asks you to help them move on Saturday. If you don't want to do it, a direct answer is, I can't help that day, but I hope the move goes smoothly. That's it. Clean, simple, respectful. Now compare that to the defensive version. Oh, I'd love to help, but I'm just so tired and I've had such a long week and I think my back might be sore and I might already have plans, but I'll see if I can shuffle things around. You hear the difference. The second one is an invitation for them to argue. Come on, it's just a couple of hours. You can rest after. Well, be careful with your back. Before you know it, you've been talked into it. Not because you wanted to, but because your defensive explanation gave them wiggle room. Directness closes the door without slamming it. It leaves no cracks for negotiation. And guess what? The people who respect you will accept your no at face value. The only people who get offended by your directness are the ones who are benefiting from your lack of boundaries in the first place. That's not your problem. That's theirs. Now, let's address the fear that keeps you defensive. Most people think if they say no directly, they'll look rude, cold, or selfish. But that's a lie your guilt tells you. Directness isn't about being harsh. It's about being honest. You can say no with kindness and still be firm. For example, thank you for thinking of me, but I'm not available. Notice how that's both respectful and final and honors the other person while honoring yourself. That's the balance you're aiming for. Defensiveness also wastes energy. Every time you spin up an elaborate excuse, you're burning mental calories you could be spending on things that actually matter, and often your excuses don't even make sense. People can smell when you're making things up. That chips away at your credibility. Directness, on the other hand, strengthens your integrity. When you say what you mean, people trust you more, even when they don't like your answer. Another problem with being defensive is that it trains people to push. If every time you say no, you cushion it with a pile of excuses, you're teaching others that your boundaries are flexible. They start looking for loopholes. It's like leaving the back door unlocked and then wondering why someone keeps sneaking in. Directness locks the door. It communicates, this is my line, I'm not crossing it. Let me give you another straight example. Someone invites you to a party you don't want to attend. Defensive response, I'd love to, but I'm just so busy with work and I think I might already have something planned. And honestly, I've just been feeling tired lately. That's basically begging them to say, oh, don't worry, it'll just be for a few hours. Come relax, you'll have fun. Now you feel trapped. The direct response, thanks for inviting me, but I'm going to pass this time. They might be disappointed, but they can't argue with it. And if they do, you just repeat yourself, I understand, but I'm not going to make it. You don't need to justify your no, you just need to hold it. The more you practice directness, the more natural it becomes. At first, you might feel the urge to fill the silence after your no. Don't. Silence is part of the boundary. Let the no hang in the air. It's not your job to manage the other person's emotions. They're responsible for handling their disappointment, just like you're responsible for protecting your time and energy. That's not selfish, that's adulthood. When you strip the defensiveness out of your no, something powerful happens. You stop negotiating against yourself. You stop living in fear of disapproval. And you realize that saying no doesn't end relationships, it strengthens them. Because the relationships that survive your honesty are the ones worth keeping. So remember this, every time you get defensive, you're acting like your no needs permission to exist. It doesn't. Directness is you giving yourself that permission. And when you do, you'll discover that people take you more seriously. You take yourself more seriously, and the guilt you've been dragging around finally starts to lose its grip. Being direct isn't rude, it's respect in its purest form. Respect for yourself and respect for others. Guilt is the #1 reason people choke on the word no. The second they even think about turning down a request, a wave of guilt crashes over them. They imagine disappointing someone, hurting their feelings, or letting them down. That guilt feels so heavy that it becomes easier to say yes, even when you're screaming no on the inside. But here's the truth you need to hear. Guilt is not proof you've done something wrong. Guilt is often just a sign that you're breaking an old pattern. And if the old pattern was people-pleasing, then guilt isn't a warning siren. It's a signal that you're finally doing something right. The key is to stop letting guilt run the show and start replacing it with respect. Think about it. When you say yes out of guilt, what are you really doing? You're disrespecting yourself. You're saying, my needs, my energy, my priorities, my time, they don't matter as much as someone else's. That's not humility, that's self-erasure. And over time, it eats away at your sense of worth. But when you say no from a place of respect, you're sending a different message. I value myself enough to honor my limits. I value you enough to be honest instead of resentful. That shift from guilt to respect changes everything. Let's get clear. Guilt is about control. It's either you trying to control someone else's feelings or them trying to control yours. When you say yes because you're afraid someone will be upset, you're actually trying to manage their emotional state. But here's the reality check. You can't control other people's feelings. They're allowed to be disappointed. They're allowed to wish you said yes. That's their right. And you're allowed to set boundaries. That's your right. Respect says, I won't lie to you with a fake yes, and I won't lie to myself by betraying my own needs. Respect also means trusting the other person to handle your honesty. Too often, we act like other people are fragile children who can't cope with hearing no. That's insulting. When you respect someone, you give them the dignity of the truth. You let them feel whatever they need to feel without trying to manipulate it. Maybe they're disappointed. Maybe they're frustrated. That's fine. Respect trusts that they can manage those feelings. Guilt says, I have to protect them from reality. Respect says, I'll give them the truth and trust they can handle it. Now, let's talk about the respect you owe yourself. Every no rooted in respect reinforces your boundaries and strengthens your self-trust. Each time you honor your limits, you prove to yourself that your well-being matters. And that builds confidence. On the flip side, every yes rooted in guilt chips away at your self-respect. You feel smaller, weaker, and more resentful. It's like making a withdrawal from your self-worth bank account. Eventually, you end up overdrawn. Respect is the deposit. It restores what guilt takes away. Replacing guilt with respect doesn't mean you stop caring about people. It means you stop lying to them and to yourself. Real care is built on honesty, not appeasement. Think about it. Would you rather have a friend who tells you the truth, even when it stings, or one who sugarcoats everything and secretly resents you? Of course, you'd want the honest one. That's what respect looks like in action. It's not always comfortable, but it's always clean. Here's something else. Guilt keeps you stuck in the past while respect keeps you present. Guilt replays old tapes in your head, your parents telling you to always be polite, your teacher praising you for being cooperative. That time you said no and someone got mad. Respect focuses on right now. It asks, what's the honest and fair choice in this moment? Respect doesn't let old conditioning drive the car. It puts you back in the driver's seat. So how do you start making the switch? First, recognize the guilt for what it is, habit, not truth. Just because you feel guilty doesn't mean you've done anything wrong. Second, reframe your no as respect in action. Instead of thinking, I'm letting them down, tell yourself, I'm respecting both of us by being honest. Third, practice small no's and notice how quickly the guilt fades. Guilt feels massive in the moment, but it shrinks fast when you realize the world doesn't collapse just because you set a boundary. Here's the payoff when you replace guilt with respect. Your relationships actually get healthier. People start trusting your yes because it means something. They know you won't say yes unless you mean it, and that makes your commitments more valuable. And you start trusting yourself more, too, because you know you're not throwing yourself under the bus for the sake of avoiding a few minutes of discomfort. So let's call it out. Guilt is a lousy compass. It points you towards self-betrayal and away from authenticity. Respect is the compass that leads you to healthier relationships, stronger self-worth, and a life that actually reflects your values. You don't need to keep dragging guilt around like a ball and chain. Drop it, replace it with respect, and watch how much lighter, freer, and more honest your life becomes.